There we go.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Well, thanks for giving me some of your time. I know who you are, but how about we start a little bit about who you are and what you're all about?
Great. My name is Elizabeth Higgins Clark. I live in Los Angeles. I'm from New Jersey. And I moved out here because I work as an actor out here. And then about 2 years ago, I froze my eggs while I was still in my 20s. And then subsequently, I've done some speaking about that and kind of gone to some college campuses to try to educate younger women about fertility.
So that was in 2014?
Yes, it was right around, I did it in May of 2014. And so it's almost exactly 2 years ago.
Oh, wow. And
Yeah.
what was the outcome of your freezing? Did you do it just one time?
I did just one time. I was 29 at the time, so I got a pretty sizable harvest. I produced 24 eggs in a
Wow.
cycle, and then 16 of the 24 were mature enough to freeze. So I have
Oh.
16 frozen.
Yeah, I had a similar outcome. I had 23 follicles. I think 22 got extracted and 17 froze.
Wow, that's really good.
Yeah, you too. Did you have a hard time picking the clinic that you wanted to go to, or was that kind
Uh,
of organic?
No, well, I interviewed at a couple different places. I went to I had a couple different consultations with doctors. I decided to do it. I live in Los Angeles, but my family is all in New York and New Jersey. So I don't have any immediate plans to leave Los Angeles, but I knew no matter where I am, my family will always be in the New York, New Jersey area. So I ended up going with RMA
Hmm.
in New Jersey because I
Yeah,
really liked them and I knew that they had quite the reputation. So
yeah, they
that's
do
where I
have a
decided.
good reputation. How did you first learn about egg freezing?
I don't know the answer to that. Like, I certainly had heard of it. I remember watching an episode of The Kardashians where Kim Kardashian froze her eggs. But I had heard of it for sure. I don't know where I first heard of it. But when I really got serious about it was in January of 2014. I read a brief article about a woman who gave birth to her first child at the age of 49. And I thought, how does that happen?
Happen?
And so, I did some research on that, and I thought, what I learned was that most likely that was not, those weren't her eggs. They were either donor eggs or if she had frozen her eggs a long time ago, but most likely they were donor eggs. So then I kind of started to think about, gosh, there's this possibility where I could be my own egg donor. And so that's kind of what led me to egg freezing.
So that kind of got the whole concept started for you.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Was there a particular life event or something that also made you think about egg freezing or?
I think, it was January, and I think oftentimes in January you start thinking about what you want from a new year. And also, I knew that that was the year that I was going to turn 30. And so I think any birthday that ends in zero kind of makes you take stock of things and think about what you want. And so I knew at that time that I didn't feel, some of my friends were starting to have children and I knew I wanted children, but I didn't feel like I was close to when I would, I didn't think it was a year away or 2 years away. I thought it was more like 5 years away or maybe even longer. And so that kind of sent me down the path of, well, if it is going to be 5 years away and I want more than one child, how can I give myself the best odds of having the outcome that I desire?
So do you feel pretty motivated to become a mother and that was also a reason you froze?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've always wanted children, so it's important to me. So that certainly um, was behind, that certainly motivated my decision to freeze my eggs, for sure.
And how was your cycle? Did you feel like it was manageable? How was the shots? Like, are
Yeah,
you
no,
a,
I had done a lot of internet research, which is not like, I don't think it's the greatest thing in the world, but so I was expecting it to be a lot much worse than it actually was. I mean, I had some, it was pretty uncomfortable by the end. And, the shot, it's unpleasant. It's not, it just feels like that whole time while you're doing it, your life revolves around that, and which is fine. So it's an interesting time, but I found, I think I had a pretty mild experience. I didn't experience a lot of things that I had read about that seemed terrible. But I was pretty uncomfortable by the end. And then I had a rough, like, I'd say 2 to 3 days after the harvest. I really did
Me
not do well.
too. I was
Yeah.
so glad my harvest was on a Thursday because then I had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to recover.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard about some women going back to work the next day, and I don't know how they do that. I don't think I could have done that. I was really kind of out for the count for about 2 to 3 days.
Right. Yeah, me too. I actually Airbnb my house sometimes when I travel, and I had just
Huh.
come back from a trip not long before that, and I hadn't redone the room yet. And I had to ask a neighbor to come help me just to make a
Oh,
bed.
oh yeah, no, that's so. What was good for me is I was actually at home since I did it in New Jersey, and so I had my mom to kind of like take care of me a little bit, which was quite.
Yeah, moms are great for that.
They are. There's no one better than a mom for that.
Right. So how was your family? Were they pretty supportive?
Very, I was a little nervous about telling them. My parents are divorced, so I told them separately. But you know, I remember I was really fortunate. I told my dad that I was thinking about doing it, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "I'll pay for half,"
Oh,
which was
wow.
so nice. And so we split that, and
Yeah,
then
he's investing in his future grandchildren.
yeah, I think so too. And I think, I have a brother, but he has something called Fragile X syndrome, so which is a form of mental retardation. So he'll never have children. So I think I'm my parents' only chance for grandchildren. So I think
That's a lot of pressure.
yeah, it is, and it would be a lot of pressure if I didn't want them, but I do
Sure.
want them. So
Yeah.
I think he was happy to kind of help secure that. He told me that he had thought about that maybe I should do that. It had come to him that he thought I should do that, but he didn't know how to like approach it with me. So
Or
he
talk
was
about the
very happy.
topic.
Yeah. He just didn't know if I would get upset if he
Oh,
suggested it or whatever. But
that's so
so he was
cute.
quite happy when I brought it to him, and then my mom was supportive. My whole family was quite supportive.
That's great. I think family support definitely makes the whole process a little easier because then you don't have to hide anything. And
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
so, was the finances part, did that seem challenging, or since your dad offered to pay for half, it definitely
Yeah,
alleviated that burden?
it's certainly, it's a lot of money. And I just actually got my storage fee bill like 2 weeks ago for this coming year. And it's a lot, but it felt like for me and where I was at and the resources I had, it felt like it was worth it, and it was
Hmm.
worth. And I also knew, because I had done some research, because the chances of having like a good quality and quantity of a harvest, I did it younger. So I thought, all right, well, if I'm gonna do this, I might as well do it as soon as possible. So I'll only have to do it, hopefully only have to do it once.
Right.
Instead of I waited a couple of years and then maybe
The
needing
quality
to do
wouldn't be
it
the same.
two and some. Right, exactly, to kind of get the amount in reserve that I wanted.
Right, and that's a good point because quality is just as important as the quantity. So you need
Yeah,
both.
I mean, I don't know, but I would imagine that quality is almost more important.
Yeah, that's a
But
good point.
uh,
Yeah. So how do you feel afterwards? I mean, it's been a year or two, or going
two,
on two,
yeah.
and have you thought about it much since? Do you feel different?
Yeah, I used to think about it quite a bit. It was weird, like the first few months, I would be like, ooh, I'm a month older than my eggs, or, I would think about that a lot in the first few months. Now I gotta say, I don't really think about them that much anymore. I know that but it's a nice comfort. Like when I feel much less frantic than I used to feel,
As
just
far
across
as
the board.
like finding your significant other and things?
Yeah, there's that. And then there's also, no matter what happens, I feel like I made this decision to give myself the best future I can have, no matter what form that future kind of takes.
Yeah, you gave yourself future options. I feel like that too.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. I think life's greatest luxury is a sense of possibility, and I think egg freezing gives you a lot of that.
A lot of options. Yeah. Well, what would be the best advice you would give someone that's debating whether they should do this or not? Or
I would say definitely do your research and kind of find out, because I don't think it's for everyone. I don't think it's something that should just be an across the board thing that girls do. I think it's, if it makes sense for you, do it. But I think definitely learn about it, whether you're just curious or whether you think, oh, I would never do that. It's an amazing time, because we're at the beginning of a time where this is a possibility and that this is becoming more and more accessible. And so I think take advantage of the fact that we are the beginning of that.
right.
That's exciting.
Yeah, we're definitely in the generation where if we had been born 10 years ago, this may not have been a possibility for
Oh,
us.
for sure. Yeah, we're really at the beginning of it. So
Yeah.
that's a great thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, what are you up to these days? Are you have some new shows coming up and
Yeah, well, I'm quite excited. I just finished writing a play, so
wow.
yeah.
Is
So
that something new for you? Have you written plays before?
no, I've never written. I've written articles for the Huffington Post, and
Yeah.
I've worked on some other things, but I've never written something kind of full length before. So I just finished that. We had our first reading of it on Sunday, so I've got some revisions to do, and now I'm kind of excited and a little daunted, but very excited about what it's going to be like to try to get it produced and things like that. So
So
it's new
neat.
things, which I like.
So neat. Well, I just think you're such an inspiration to women and your story is really powerful.
I think you're such an inspiration. I really appreciate the fact that you're spending so much time and energy trying to help educate women about this exciting new thing that's available to them.
Thank you. Well, and you are too. So you speak to a lot of colleges or campuses?
Yeah, I mean, I've done that, and I'd like to continue doing more of it. I think what's so interesting is so often when before I started doing it, people would say to me, "Oh, well, you're not going to really get like college age girls. It's just too far down the road. They're not going to want to think that long term." And I completely disagree, because when I've done them, I give a speech, and then at the end there's time for Q&A, and you we're never at a loss for questions. These girls have a lot of them, and they want answers. And so I think that it's foolish to kind of write them off as not really thinking about their futures, because a lot of them really are.
Well, especially when you're in that career mindset of getting your degree and what your future plans are for work and
Yeah. Yeah.
what your goals are. I could see that. Well, I'm glad
Yeah.
you're breaking that stereotype because I think it is important to talk about it sooner, talk about it earlier, so you have time to digest all these feelings.
Yeah, and I mean, if I had it to do over again, that's something, one question that I get asked frequently is, if you had it to do over again, do you think 29 is the time to do it? And honestly, if I had to do it over again and I knew what I know now, I would have done it like first month out of college. I think
Really?
that would have been, yeah, I would have taken the month off after college, done it, and then had them there and kind of, then go off, live your life. And if you need them, you need them. If you don't, you don't. But think about how many you could produce and how good they would be at 22.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think yeah, that's something. And I don't think we're that far away from that becoming maybe not a common practice, but certainly not unusual.
Right. And I think the price is getting driven down too now that there's more people investing
For sure.
in it.
It's definitely becoming more accessible, and a lot of places are offering payment plans and things like
Or
that.
packages where you could do it multiple times.
Absolutely.
I think it's just
there
about
are options.
asking the right questions too. Like when you're comfortable with a clinic, saying, "Hey, what are my options?"
Absolutely. And most places I think do have options, as far as I know. But I think, you want to make sure it's a strange thing, because you want to do it in a cost-effective way, but it's certainly not something that you just want to go to the cheapest place to do, because you don't want to like skimp on this. You know,
Right,
you want to make
right.
sure you're going to a place that has good practices and
Good
I think
ethics and
yes,
good
ethics are really.
materials.
I really felt RMA in New Jersey, which I had a very good experience at. I really like that on the back end, their whole philosophy is one baby at a time. So they're
Oh,
not looking like when you go to use the eggs, they're not looking to implant 3 or 4 embryos or anything like that.
just
And
for rates or stats or,
yeah, exactly. They want one healthy baby at a time. That is their philosophy, and I really appreciate that. And that, helped me kind of make a decision, because I thought, that's what I want. You don't want it's not ideal to get into a situation where you're pregnant with triplets or quadruplets, and
oh,
that can lead to some very difficult choices. So
well, and or the pregnancy might not go to full term, and
for
then you
sure,
have
you
babies in
yeah.
the NICU that could die or have health issues.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's there are a lot of questions to ask when you are doing, if you're having consultations with doctors, and kind of think about that. And also, like, I remember asking, because it was shortly after Hurricane Sandy, which had affected New York and New Jersey quite a bit. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, what do you do in a hurricane if all the power, how do you keep them frozen? What are the backup plans and
They have
all
a
of that
backup
stuff?
generator, right?
Yeah, well, they all have generators, and I learned this because during Hurricane Sandy, NYU, the hospital in New York, is right by the river, and so they got flooded. They had to evacuate everything, but apparently they didn't lose any eggs or embryos. They got them all out. They got them all. I'm not positive that that's the case, but that is what I've heard through multiple sources, that they got them all out. And so you want to, I don't know, you just kind of, they're certainly, your frozen eggs are not babies, but they're potential. They could be babies. So I think you got to almost look at it that way and kind of, take care of the situation as you would if it were an actual baby.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that they do a great job with, natural disasters and things they can't control and thinking that out.
For sure. Yeah, they
Because
do.
that's, I mean, thousands of dollars of worth of genetic material of people's livelihoods and on the line.
Your livelihoods and also like your future. I mean, it would be devastating if something
Yeah,
happened.
yeah. So we'll just hope nothing happens.
Yes, please, no.
You could just wave to your little icicles as
I
you drive
know.
by your parents' house.
Yeah.
Well, you've been so much of a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for giving me some of your time.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much, Valerie. It was so nice to talk to you.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye
Bye-bye.
now.